I will very quickly take you back to the first day that we started off with. What are we trying to do and what is on agenda and how we are placed right now. So this whole series is to understand Vedantic philosophy, considering ourselves as beginners. From a beginner's point of view, we try to understand the Vedantic philosophy in a certain time frame, say 12 sessions or 16 sessions. I have divided this into 6 subsections. The first section that we spent 3 classes on was how to prepare the mind for such a study. This is important because this kind of inquiry requires a certain level of preparation. The preparation of mind in itself becomes the training of the mind to inquire properly is essential for any kind of learning, especially any spiritual learning has to be participative. I cannot just listen to something or read and accept something. Then it becomes rote learning or blind faith. Spiritual study has to be participatory. And to participate properly, I need to prepare myself. And that is what Vedanta preparation. That was our first topic. Second is there has to be the philosophy is presented from 3 paradigms. One is Jeev, that is self. Second is Jagat, my experience field. And the Brahman, the pure consciousness, the reason behind Jeev and Jagat. So that's what we are, preparation of the mind, Jeev, Jagat and Brahman, a discussion on that. Then resolution of contradictions that arise and also understanding the relationship between the Jeev, Jagat and Brahma trilogy. So this is one explanatory session to explain the 3 concepts. First, we understand them individually, then we try to integrate them and understand the conflicts that arise because Brahman is a concept which is limitless, which is ever existent, which is without space and time. And I'm trying to understand a concept which is beyond my mind through my limited expressions. So there will be some contradictions that will arise. So we try to clarify as much as possible. And finally, we discuss the idea which is presented as the recognition of identity or Aham Brahmasmi. So preparation of mind, the anatomy of Jeev, Jagat and Brahma, the relationship and the contradictions as we discuss them individually, whatever arises, we discuss that. It's essentially joining the dots and then finally going deep into the idea of Brahman and recognition of identity becomes a whole full-fledged discussion. Now, so this is the structure we are following. And right now we are somewhere in middle of discussing, like we spent a full session on understanding anatomy of the jiva. There were some aspects remaining, so we covered that, and this is where we are currently. I'm just quickly going through from the first day to here in 10, 12 minutes so that we are all at the same page all over again because 1 week has passed and multiple weeks have passed. I'm trying to summarize everything and present where we are and where we are headed. Structure of the program, that's what I just laid out. Now, why do you all are present here? So essentially, why are we trying to discuss this philosophy? Why do we want to discuss something like this? So another way to put up this question is, what is the essential question that this philosophy wants to answer? This philosophy wants to answer the question of suffering, like other Indian or Oriental philosophies. The essence is that I want to end my own suffering, not temporarily, but once and for all. So the essential dissatisfaction that human beings experience, no matter what they achieve, no matter how good they are doing in this life, there is an element of dissatisfaction that permeates our being. So why do we feel so dissatisfied, or how do we tackle this essential suffering that we go through? The answer lies, according to Vedanta, is that this suffering that we experience is because of mis like identifying ourselves incorrectly. This misidentification brings about its own suffering, and that is what permeates the whole human experience. What is this misidentification? The idea being that we are, the assumption here is, the philosophy has one big assumption: the Brahma is pure and ever present, ever conscious, ever blissful, and limitless. And we have identified ourselves with temporary knowledge, temporary bliss, temporary powers, and limited strength. So we have boxed ourselves, and because we have boxed ourselves, there is something in us that keeps telling us that you are much more than what you think you are right now. And that recognition of not being complete, not being totally powerful, totally knowledgeable, that limited feeling brings about its own dissatisfaction. How do we go from a dissatisfied state to a perfectly blissful state? That journey, Vedanta helps us unravel and takes us through that journey. And that is the essential question that Vedanta tries to answer. Suffering that we experience is the result of misidentification, and that misidentification of our own being is what we need to understand and rectify in that sense. So this is a philosophy of recognition, not discovery, because the presumption is that we are pure, we are limitless, and we are powerful, and we are omniscient, and that we need to rediscover that. The origin and the essence of all suffering that we experience is because of this misidentification. Preparation of the mind, how do we go about it, or what are the qualities that are required to be ready to prepare our mind? First of all, that is vivek, or discrimination. We will come back to this discrimination when we are discussing anatomy of jiva. Discrimination is important there. Vairagya, or dispassion, a natural detachment from pleasures and achievements of this world, has to be there. This state, this vairagya, is also represented in yogic philosophy. My whole experience is of the world. This energy from myself goes outward. I'm experiencing things through the senses, and this experience through the senses tickles my mind, and that generates likes and dislikes, and then there is a response. So this disturbance that is created because of my sensory perceptions, that's how I'm experiencing the world, that produces a response, and that response is based out of likes and dislikes. So this is what you call a passionate response. The response which is not motivated by likes and dislikes, that position is called vairagya. Vairagya, generally we think, is leaving out things or renunciation. That's an outward expression of vairagya. Essential or inward expression of, when you get sensory inputs, you are responding to sensory inputs because you are in the world, you have to respond to sensory inputs. The response is beyond any agitation. You respond with total mental tranquility. That is how you express vairagya in the truest sense. For vairagya, you do not need to be a monk or a sadhu. You are not touched by place you hold in this world, the profession you exercise, or whether you are married, unmarried, or whether you are a monk or a politician or a king. Rag is essentially the state of mind where you are responding without agitation, without likes and dislike to any sensory input. To achieve that state, in yoga, you have a word called pratyahar. Yoga, the Ashtanga yoga path is yam, niyam, asan. Then you have pranayam, and then you have pratyahar. So what pranayam, the simple breathing exercises that we understand, are essentially to control the flow of energy. When you can reverse the flow of energy, then you are actually protecting yourself from passion. That is what the state you achieve through pratyahar. This passion is a foundational step for the higher states of dhyan, dharana, and samadhi. So without pratyahar, it's very difficult to achieve deep meditation. Why? Because if you are agitated by sensory inputs, then your mind will only play around the sensory inputs. You have to detach yourself. So, Vivek Vairagya. Then you have your Sat Sampati, where you master your mind, master your senses, then you withdraw from compulsive activity. So, there are six more that are given to prepare your mind, and then comes the burning desire for liberation. If you have the burning desire for liberation and you do not have vivek or vairag, the other six qualities, then also it will do. That's the highest thing that you should have, the intense longing for liberation. According to Vedanta, right now you do not desire liberation totally and fully. If you were consumed by that desire for liberation, that you want to be free from suffering, then reality will present itself to you. There will be nothing that will hide behind the screen of Maya. So, burning desire for liberation is the ultimate requirement for understanding or pursuing this philosophy. So these are the things that are required to prepare the mind. Then comes the anatomy of Jiva. That is what we started discussing last day. You may find that I am repeating some of the concepts that I have discussed earlier. I find value in repeating these concepts because every new is built upon the concept that we have discussed earlier, and no concept we can completely discuss in one day. And hence I bring back concepts. All right. Now, coming back to Jiva or the anatomy of Jiva, the first and the most essential question that we ask, Vedantic philosophy wants to answer your suffering, wants to find a solution to your suffering. To your suffering is the essence, the your being the operative word. So now, if I am talking about your, then Vedanta has to explain what is this term called your suffering, who's suffering. And hence it is answering this question, that it is describing the self, the jiva, the one who is experiencing things. This needs to be explained in detail, and hence the whole detailed anatomy of the jiva. Okay, the essential question that we started off with, that if I want to understand my own anatomy, or if I want to understand the relevance of this discussion, is who do you identify yourself with, or who do you take yourself to be? Who do you take yourself to be becomes your essential question around which the whole discussion will revolve. Now, who do you take yourself to be is explained through this whole discussion on anatomy of. We discussed the benefits and why it is useful to discuss the anatomy, etc. I will straight jump into the anatomy of, explain that part in detail a little. Let's focus on the anatomy of Jiva one more time. So, anatomy of the self, this experiencer, is divided into two streams. So, the first stream is called the Sharir Traya, the structural model. And then you have the Panch Kosha, the experiential model. Traya is the structural model. Just remember these two words. And then you have the experiential model in Panch Kosh. Sharir Traya, I will just give you the names: Sthul Sharir, Shukshma Sharir, and the Karn Sharir, which is your gross body, subtle body, and the causal body. Then you have the Panch Kosh. Panch Kosh, these are the four koshas. So Sharir Traya is your structural model, and your Panch Kosha is the experiential model of the self. I'll just pause here for a moment. Do you all remember these two things that mentioned Panch Kosh and Sharir Traya?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any comments, questions so far? I have first for the first part of discussion. Any questions or comments? Please share, and then I will proceed. Yeah.
The gross body is easy to understand, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the other ones. It's a little difficult. If you could explain the subtle.
We'll go a little deeper today into those. Anything else you have in mind? Please share. Now, before getting into the details of the Panch Koshas, Let me first explain what we are trying to address through these. When I am talking about the experiential model of my being, what I mean is, what am I exactly identified with? If that is the question I need to ask, then I need the help of the koshas. So, whether I'm more in the body and the senses. For example, there are some of us, or there are phases in our lives where we are very concerned with our body, how we look. We are totally engrossed with food, or we are totally engrossed with sensory pleasures. So, this is a state where I'm living out of the Anandamaya Kosha, where everything is about body and senses. Okay. So that's one state of being, and my identification is in the Anandamaya Kosha. This is the experience of body and senses. That's the most important thing for me. And I see every decision or everything I feel, believe, my discrimination is clouded by the experience which I want to have through my body and senses. So when your discrimination is clouded by the bodily perceptions and your desire to experience the best for the body and best for the senses, then you are living in the Anandamaya Kosha. That's your body and sensory perception when they rule you. Then there is a layer where you are ruled by energy. I am high on energy, I'm low on energy. My energy is allowing me to be creative. My energy is allowing me to practice. My energy is allowing me to focus. So your actions are driven by the feeling of your energy. This is a term that we use quite often, that this is how my energy is working. So this is where your pranamaya kosha begins, or this is the impact of energy that you feel on your life. Sometimes when you interact with people, you say the energy did not match, or we vibe very well. So this vibing very well, or this energy, even without interacting much, there are people who we get along with very well. So this is at an energy level that is happening. And according to this Panch Kosha model, this is happening at the Pranamaya Kosha. There are people who go beyond their physical likes and dislikes, but cannot cross the barrier of energy. They are driven by their energy and hence driven by their Pranamaya Kosha. Their identification or working is through that level. Then comes Manomaya Kosha, those who are driven by their feelings or emotions. This or emotional impulse rules them. So their consciousness predominantly resides in the emotional. So Manomaya Kosha is where you experience all your emotions according to this Panch Kosha. Anatomically, experientially, this is the kosha where all emotions originate. So Manomaya Kosha. Somebody who is driven by intellect or strong discrimination, that is where your Vijnanamaya Kosha is. One who is even sometimes a lot of reason and logic resides there. And then you have your Anandamaya Kosha, where you are driven by deep-seated habits or experience a very quiet happiness. The deep samskaras reside in your causal body, the Anandamaya Kosha. So your natural disposition that you experience as a human being is expressed through the Anandamaya Kosha. And when you can align your motivation, your action, your speech to your most natural self, the self of this world, then you are quietly happy. And that state is experienced through the Anandamaya Kosha. This is how you can identify which layer you are experiencing your life through. This kosha structure helps if you are into self-inquiry, want psychological clarity, or want to get deep into meditation. Understanding where you lie in this structure or where your mind is predominantly operating helps you identify the layer in which you are operating. And as you go from gross to subtle, that is from Anandamaya Kosha to Anandamaya Kosha, then you know that you are refining your understanding as you progress. So this is your view to look at.
Sorry, I just needed a clarification on what you spelled out. So, two quick questions. One is, are these five koshas you mentioned progressive? And number two, is it possible to separate them as clearly as you spelled it out? Because sometimes it might be a mixed gray area where one bleeding into the others.
Yes, it will blend into one to another. So, and you could think of them as concentric, not layered. Because, for example, you had a very heavy lunch. That heavy lunch was an experience of the body, but the impact of that will be on your energy and how you emote and how you think will be impacted by what you ate. If you had something which was numbing, say alcohol, then that alcohol will have an impact on your energy, how you emote, and how you think. So you can see how it cascades. Similarly, if you had a very heavy lunch, that will push you towards inertia. That inertia is experienced as energy. That results into a set of emotions, which can be boredom, which could be lethargy, which could be non-reactiveness. That could impact how you think. One impacts the other. They are not watertight compartments. They are quite interrelated. What is your operating field is something that you understand if you inquire that where, what is the level at which you mostly operate is the question to be asked when you are thinking about the koshas. Yes, Abir. Okay, Mona Lisa.
Sir, I was asking how important it is to be aware of which kosha you are in. In terms of, I'm saying like dogs are so happy, right? Like they're just like randomly happy all the time. So
Yes,
I'm just thinking, is a place of ignorance when we are experiencing something? Because you said Anandamai to Anandamai kosha, right? So is it
yes.
important that we are aware that we have transcended these different koshas, or awareness experience is important? Did you get my question?
I did. I did.
Okay.
See, what happens, I have written one line to answer this question actually. Give me a second. I want to get this right. What happens, any suffering or any pain that I experience, pain plus identity results into suffering. Any pain, any experience, and when I closely associate myself with that, that results into suffering. Pain plus some context gives me information about what is happening to me. So, this structural understanding of the self places my pain and my experiences into some kind of context. When I do not have context, I identify myself with the pain so much that I suffer a lot. The moment I have a context to my experience, then that context becomes information. So, this is the play that is happening right now. The knowledge I'm acquiring and the Karn Sharir and the Panch Koshas that we are discussing, they are not needed in my daily life, but they are very useful if I know them and understand at what level I am operating right now. If it is a pain that I am experiencing, or if it is an irritation that I'm unable to explain, then this kind of self inquiry, what did I identify with? Where did I operate from? These kind of things help me to put context to my experience. And that becomes information I can work with. So, dogs remaining happy without knowing the Panch Koshas is because they are not into a self. But if I'm in a self-inquiry mode, then I need context. And these structures being provided to me are just helpful if and only if they provide some kind of context to my inquiry. So, say for example, I'm not into Vedanta philosophy and I am a devotee of Krishna, like Mirabai was. He has no understanding of the Panch Koshas, but she's so devoted to her deity and so deep into the practice of love. And it is so pure that she knows the reality. Anybody who is following with non-dualistic path, say the path of Vedanta or Shaivism, or somebody is into yoga. So you do not need these particularly. But if you are a person who is into self-inquiry, like Mirabai was not into self-inquiry, she was a person of devotion. She also reached the ultimate essence. She also understood the ultimate essence of this universe. We could absolutely be devoid of this knowledge and yet understand reality. That's why you have multiple paths. You have Buddhism, you have Jainism, you have path of devotion, you have yoga, you have Shaivism. Sankhya is very important. 7 paths I could just list out. You could be a follower of any and still reach the end result. Once you experience the end, you understand the true nature of this universe, and your suffering has come to an end, then you also understand how all paths merge. So, what we are seeking is context to our problems. This kind of inquiry helps me to put a context to it. For example, Anandamaya Kosha, how it shows up in daily life is like you could think you are operating your relationship with food, your relationship with exercise, with sleep, fatigue, with pain, with your posture, with your digestion. This is all in the sphere of the body. And this sphere of the body is presented by the stool. So this is pretty simple, pretty direct, pretty exact. Where do you see it becomes a problem? When you sit to meditate. And if you are constantly fidgety, if you are constantly thinking that my knee is hurting, my back is hurting, my neck is hurting, then in the language of meditation or in the scriptural language, a guru would say that come out of your body consciousness, then only you can progress. And that's why you need a very strong body to sit steady in meditation so that you can break out of that consciousness. If you have a weak body, you need a very strong body to meditate and go deep into these practices. Because if you are totally concerned by whether I can sit straight or not, then your consciousness is stuck in the body, needs to have a name. We have Anandamaya Kosha. Understand? And this body needs to be classified that, all right, this is what you call your gross body. This is why you need it. If you are into conscious eating, you are following dietary discipline, you're trying to go beyond your likes and dislikes vis-a-vis food, then you are progressing into subtlety. You're no longer bound by your body, you're no longer bound by your senses. You can enjoy whatever is being offered, but you are not bound by them. A compulsive eating disorder that you want to eat, you want to have your tea at 4 p.m. If you can break out, these are practical utilities that you can see that you are breaking the bondages of your body. Similarly, let us look at pranamaya kosha. How does it appear? If you are continuously on a high and low, if you are going through anxiety, restlessness, if your breath quality reflects the mental state that you are agitated, you are not in control of your breath, it is going heavy, it is going fast, there is palpitation, these are all signs of your pranamaya kosha being disturbed. So you want to regulate your pranamaya kosha, and hence you have pranayama, where you regulate your breath to stabilize your energy. Once you stabilize your energy, all anxiety, restlessness, focus, concentration related issues are handled by breath control. You need to control and observe your breath to handle this. So you have pranayam, you have pranamaya kosha, and what does pranayam does or pranamaya kosha does? It balances out your energy. And if it balances out your energy, then you have less anxiety, restlessness, and you are more focused. See how they're related? Now, another thing to understand, this is from Abhi's question, do they overlap? Now, you can have physical pain, and that too chronic pain, which is constant, born out of anxiety and restlessness. So how your pranamaya kosha disturbs your anandamaya kosha, like how your experience of energy can impact your bodily experiences is pain also, because so many papers, research, everything is coming out where they say that pain is psychosomatic. There's a better understanding of that. If you can regulate and control your breath and reduce anxiety, you may impact your body positively as well. That's why they say that if you breathe properly during yoga practice, then you are impacting both. That's why yoga becomes a psychosomatic practice. It is not just the practice of the body. A pose is said to be perfect only when your breath is not disturbed while doing that pose. So you could do splits with lot of effort, and your splits have resulted in your breath going haywire. Or splits is an extreme example. Bhujangasana. If during Bhujangasana your breath is disturbed and you feel out of control during your breath, or Sarvangasana, very good example, where your chin is tucked into the chest and you feel choked, then also your breath is not under your control. And even if the body is straight, the breath is not under your control. So pranayam impacts energy, and that energy impacts both your mind, your anxiety, restlessness, lethargia, etc., your capacity to be creative, and it impacts your body as well. Okay. So pranayam or pranamaya kosha.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I just needed a clarification. So far, I'm with you on the 5 koshas and the 3 body states. Now, the assessment, if I understand you correctly, is being done internally by the person practicing it.
Yes.
Now, can this assessment be done externally also by somebody outside?
It will show up in your behavior. You may have seen in your family or friend circle people, if somebody is operating at a body and sensory level, it is very apparent. These are visible things you can see. It helps if you can observe from within where you are operating. But how you are operating, nobody can say with total confidence. If there is an exaggerated expression of any of the things that we have discussed, will be visible to the outer world. Whether your focus is totally into the body, or you're bound by your body, you're bound by your energy, you're bound by your emotion. And if not, then are you free from them totally, or you are subtly bound by them? These are things that people can read if they want to read you. But more importantly, can you yourself read it? People can judge us easily, rightly or wrongly. But for me, it will be more important to see myself in the mirror. That will be more difficult. People see signs of it. They may not be able to see why you are behaving in a certain manner, where the overlapping thing is coming. That will be a friend who knows you can answer that for you. But signs will be visible. Now, Manomaya Kosha, let's come to that. Thoughts, emotions, memories, likes and dislikes, reactiveness, your conditioned brain, these are all from your Manomaya Kosha. Overthinking, emotional reactivity, mood swings, and building stories in your mind, thinking what is not there, etc. So these are things that comes up through your emotional state of being. Now, emotional state of being is not always negative. It is presented as negative. Thinking of the feet is also an emotional state of mind. When you are a logical person, you have structured responses for structured problems. But life presents you different kinds of problems. When you are a person who can emote properly, then that emotion can also come out as a response which is to an unstructured question. So when you are presented with difficult situations, your ability to respond quickly is also born out of emotions. So that's where operating from emotional state is not always negative as well. Okay. So yeah, so that's your emotional state or Manomaya Kosha. Then you have your Vijnanamaya Kosha, where clarity, discretion, ethical sense, capacity to be wise, your desire to inquire, these all show up. Your ability to pause before reacting, your ability to weigh your words before speaking out, when you are operating from Vijnanamaya Kosha, you come out as a more sensible person. This is where your discrimination is mostly active. Now, go back to your first thing, preparation of the mind to go deep into Vijnanamaya Kosha. So, if your mind is stuck into your body, senses, or emotions, your pursuit will be that of a novice. Your inquiries need to go deeper, and you can go deeper only when you have Vivek. Vivek arises at Vijnanamaya. You have to operate at higher levels. You have to go beyond your own tinted glass or preconceived notions to actually get into a serious inquiry mode. This is where true self-inquiry happens. So remember, Vivek being one of the prerequisites to prepare your mind.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now see how subtle is Vivek. If somebody is stuck in the body, then their life view or inquiries will be to overcome the temporary suffering of the body. If somebody is stuck in the Manomaya Kosha, their inquiry will be mostly to end the suffering of the current restlessness or emotional disturbance that they are experiencing. If you are into a discriminative state of mind, then your inquiry will be, I understand that there will be pain in my body. Body will come and go, and this pain will also come and go. I know that I will be restless sometimes, and I will be focused sometimes. I will be anxious and not so anxious. I know that my emotions will also rise and fall. I will get angry, I will get jealous, because I'm not a perfect being. But I want to end my suffering for once and all, in spite of me having these frailties. And that is your true beginning of self-inquiry, that you accept yourself with all the flaws that you have of the first three grosser states of being. Self-inquiry, the discriminative intelligence, will help you ask questions to end your suffering, which goes beyond the body, energy, and the emotions. This is why they say you need discrimination to ask the right questions. And this discriminative intelligence resides in Vijnana. Did I make sense? Or
Yes, sir.
still
No,
what
no,
we
it
are
did not go over ahead. It was very nice. Vipin.
No, because it is very important that we see the whole. And then comes the Anandamaya Kosha. Anandamaya Kosha, Sharir, I'm just cross-referring to Sharir Traya once before I get into Anandamaya Kosha. So Sharir Traya has three states. Okay. You have your three structural bodies. You have your gross body and the senses. Then you have the subtle body, and then you have the causal body. Now, Sthul Sharir, or the causal body, let me map it out for you. Your gross body maps out to Anandamaya Kosha. Then your Pranamaya, Manomaya, and Vijnanamaya Kosha maps out to your Sthul Sharir. And your Anandamaya Kosha maps out to your Karna Sharir, or the causal body. Fine. So that's the mapping. Just keep it in mind. We will use it also. This mapping, if you remember, your Sthul Sharir, the gross body, is where you have your Anandamaya Kosha. That's the mapping. Sukshma Sharir, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya Kosha. Then Karn Sharir is your Anandamaya Kosha. We have discussed the first four koshas in detail.
I'm okay.
Stay along, because I want to complete this section today. Now, I'm cross-referencing. I have not finished the Anandamaya Kosha consciously. I'm keeping it. I'll come to it later. Now, your Sthul Sharir, where you have your Pranamaya and Manomaya and Vijnanamaya Kosha mapped out, also has a mapping of three more things. One is your five Jnanendriyas, then your Karmendriyas, and then your Mana, Ahankar, and Buddhi. First, let me take you to Mana. Mana is the place where your likes and dislikes originate. My thinking mind or the emotional state that I experience, it has a structural thing. Like Manomaya Kosha is a bigger thing, but in that you have Man where it resides. Then Man, when you have sensory input, first response is of and dislike. Now, like and dislike do not matter so much until and unless you put a identity to it. I'll explain this with a different example. Say you hear that your friend's friend is not well, but you don't know that person at all. You hear that information and feel a little bad about it, and that's about it. You do not get very disturbed. But if you know that your friend is not well, it becomes disturbing. This context becomes important. Some human being is not well, but the moment you feel pain is because you have placed your identity somewhere in that experience. This identity you place is called ahankar. The pain that you experience is in your heart or man, then hankar is what gives it the degree of pain that you experience or degree of joy. The contextualization of your experience happens because of the ahankar, the identification or the identity of things. Then comes buddhi or intellect. Intellect is where your discriminative power or vivek resides. Now, what does vivek helps you do? Helps you reduce the intensity of the pain or reduce the intensity of the experience. How? Then vivek will tell you that because you know that everything is impermanent, that impermanence is what you are experiencing when you see that person is not well. So health was his former state, illness is his current state, and he will be good again. So this discriminative power that reduces the intensity of the pain is what we call buddhi. So you have buddhi, ahankar, man. So this is in all is happening in your subtle body. Then comes your chitta or pure awareness. Pure awareness helps you understand that you had your dislike. You had an identity which you associated with your like and dislike. Then you discriminated also. So there is an observer who is seeing everything. And that layer of pure awareness of what you are experiencing comes from chitta. Chitta comes in your Anandamaya Kosha. Chitta is the repository of all the imprints that Anandamaya Kosha maps out to your causal body. Causal body is the repository of all, understand these two terms, causal body and Anandamaya Kosha. These are two, though they are mapped out, their impact is very different. Causal body is the repository of all your actions, habit patterns at the deepest level. Essentially, those are the imprints that get carried forward, and you have karma. And that is why when you have reincarnation, you are predisposed with a personality. Your personality tracing and your karma tracing goes back to your causal body, which has all the imprints. Then comes your chitta, where your deep contentment, your subtle peace, your non-reactive state is. So Anandamaya Kosha is also part of your subtle body. The moment you are so refined that you are still, you are beyond your discriminative intellect also, then what you have is a quite a blissful state. But that blissful state is also where your most subtle imprints are. So the fight to go beyond that subtle imprints is the final fight that we do. And that's the barrier we need to cross to go from the limited state of a jiva to a unlimited, limitless being of the Brahman. So Anandamaya Kosha is the most subtle layer that we transcend from being limited to limitless. So now Chit. Chit, you have heard me reference for Chit comes in the second line of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, where he is defining what is yoga. He says Yoga chitta vritti nirodh. So any variations or any disturbance at the level of the chitta, you have to subdue to attain perfect union through yoga. So the perfect union will happen when you have an undisturbed chit, your likes and dislikes gone, your ahankar almost diluted, your discriminative power you have understood, and you are going beyond that into the realm of bliss. Then also the karmic patterns are there that needs to be subjugated through attention, through the power of your focus and concentration. That stillness is the stillness that will take you beyond from limited to limitless. So that's how you refer to yoga chitta vritti. Now you understand how subtle it is. So what we experience in meditation is just a few peaceful moments. We presumably have some distance to cover to reach moksha. So that's your structure.
Thank you, sir.
And then you have your Gyanendriyas and Karmendriyas. This I'll just touch very briefly. Gyanendriyas are like you have your 5 sensory organs. So what Vedanta is saying that you could be a body which is dead and still have these organs, your eye, your nose, your tongue, etc., but they cannot operate. Your body provides you with these organs, but the ability to perceive and produce a response. Once you see something, then there is a response, whether you like what you're seeing or you are neutral or you don't like what you are seeing. That context to the light, the physical light that is coming in through your eyes, is provided by the Gyanendriyas that reside in your subtle body. Your subtle body is the repository of your likes and dislikes, your emotions, and your intellect, both the discriminative power, and it is repository of the Gyanendriyas that actually provide function to the organs. Similarly, your ability to move, your ability to walk, etc. So you have karmen, those are physical organs in the gross body, and those are the operative power provided by the subtle body that you have. So you have two broad channels. One is the structural layer of the body, another is the experiential layers of body jiva. So you have the structural layer in the sharir traya, you have the experiential layer in the Panch Koshas, and they map out also, and within them there is such distinction. If you understand this deeply, then you have broken the first layer of the thick wall. When I say I am hurt or I am happy or I am experiencing something, this I needs to be broken down so that I can navigate to the next layer. If it is too solid, I cannot see anything. This breaking down into multiple layers and structures helps me pass through or navigate through the thickness. It gives you context, a handle to work through your emotions. It helps your decision making also. It helps you understand yourself better. So there are many benefits, but I'm not going into it today. Next day, we will get into Jagat. That's another very interesting, very long discussion. There are 9 facets that I need to discuss there. So I wanted to introduce Jagat, but I'm ending with one line. Jagat Mithya. Mithya is the word that is used to describe Jagat. Now, Mithya, generally we think of it as untrue or false. But Mithya in Vedanta has a special meaning where Mithya is real, but it cannot be absolutely real. Its reality is dependent upon something else. This dependent reality is what is called Mithya in Vedantic philosophy. So Mithya, Jagat Mithya, this is very, so Jagat is not false. Jagat is not untrue. It is just not absolutely real. That's the distinction.